In a greasy Chicago diner, 11-year-old Sam scrubs plates by day and sketches storm patterns on them by night. When Harvard's top model fails, a scientist laughs at Sam's wild idea until his storm prediction proves terrifyingly right. One dishwasher, one storm, one shot to be believed. Can a boy who lost his father to a flood change the world? The rain never really stopped in Sam's part of Chicago. It slid down the cracked window like a reminder, constant and gray. 11 years old, Sam sat cross-legged on the carpet, watching weather clips on an old TV that blinked blue every few seconds. His grandma's voice floated from the kitchen. "Sam, eat while it's hot, baby. I can't warm soup twice." He didn't answer right away. The news showed a satellite image of the Midwest, swirling clouds, uncertain arrows. The meteorologist pointed north, hesitated, then corrected herself. "They keep missing the pivot," Sam muttered. "Same as last week." He stood, pulled out a folded piece of scrap paper from his sock. On it, a hand-drawn map torn from a junk mail flyer, marked with pencil swirls, numbers, and tiny arrows. A pattern only he seemed to notice. In the kitchen, Grandma Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. The apartment was tight. One bedroom, one hallway, one big wish she never said out loud, that Sam would grow up safe and seen. "Come on now," she said, setting down the chipped bowl. "Storm or no storm, you're eating." Sam sat and took the spoon, but his mind was elsewhere. Overhead, the pipes clanged. Below, the neighbor's radio played ecstatic and salsa. "Grandma, why do they always get it wrong?" She tilted her head. "The news? The forecast. It rained over here, not there." He pointed at the TV, then his own drawing. "I think the models they use are off." She raised an eyebrow. "Models? Sam, you talking college talk again?" He smiled. "Sorry." "No, don't be sorry. Just remember, smart don't mean nothing if you can't stay warm and fed." After dinner, Sam packed his plastic backpack, the kind with only one working zipper, and kissed his grandma goodbye. He walked 5 blocks through puddles to the diner. Manny's grill buzzed under a flickering sign. He wasn't on payroll. Not really, just helped out for cash under the table, scraping dishes and hauling trash. The kitchen was a blur of heat and steam. Sam's station was the sink in the back, a metal monster that hissed and gurgled. He rolled up his sleeves and started scrubbing. 1 plate, 2, 3. Then he paused. Steam curled around his fingers as he stared at the shape the leftover the spaghetti sauce had made. A curl, then a split. It looked like the last pressure system on TV. Sam grabbed a pen from his apron, turned the plate over, and started sketching on the bottom with tiny dots and curves. "What are you doing?" asked Manny, the cook, ducking back for more plates. "Nothing," Sam muttered, flipping the plate and rinsing it clean. But the image stayed with him. That night, he didn't sleep. Not really. He sat under the bathroom light, the only bulb that didn't buzz, surrounded by dinner plates and old pizza boxes. On each, he drew what he saw in the sky and what he guessed might come next. "Why don't they see it?" he whispered to himself. "It's there." One plate cracked under his elbow. He didn't even flinch. In the morning, Grandma found him curled up on the bathroom floor, arms around a stack of cold ceramic. Her voice was soft. "Baby, you can't keep doing this to yourself." "But I almost got it," he said. Just need more time. She sighed, sat beside him, her knees popping. You don't need to save the world, just survive it. But Sam looked up, eyes red but alive. What if I can do both? She didn't argue, just reached over and tucked his worn, wrinkled paper into a notebook made from cereal box covers, a symbol of hope held together with tape and love. Outside, the clouds gathered again. Sam stood at the window, tracing the edges with his finger. Somewhere out there, the smartest people in the world were missing something. And maybe, just maybe, the dishwasher kid with the plate full of swirls had seen it first. The storm came early that morning. Rain hammered the roof like a warning, hard and cold. Sam stood at the diner's back door, hoodie soaked, eyes locked on the sky. He whispered numbers under his breath, timing the breaks between thunderclaps. Inside, Manny turned up the radio. More flash floods near the lakefront. Again, that makes 3 days in a row. Somebody at the top's sleeping on the job. Sam listened harder. The newscaster's voice crackled. Harvard's Weather Research Lab halted updates after internal review. Reports of a failed model abandoned last week. He froze. Harvard failed. Sam dropped the dish in his hands. It didn't break, just clattered loudly enough for Manny to look over. You good? Sam nodded, wiping his hands on his apron. Just thinking. That night, while wiping tables after close, a couple sat near the window. Their coats were too clean for the diner. One man wore a Harvard hoodie, damp from rain. The other had a briefcase open, papers spread across the table next to half-eaten pie. Sam leaned in with the check. We shouldn't have let Monroe drop it, the man in the hoodie said. That model took years. Now the system's blind. Too many false positives. Funding dried up. Harvard doesn't gamble. But we're gambling now, he whispered. Without that prediction model, the next category 4, we won't see it coming. Sam's eyes narrowed. Prediction model, blind system. He walked away slowly, plate still in hand. He waited by the sink, then carefully opened the receipt book and scribbled 2 words on the back, Harvard Flaw. When his shift ended, he didn't head home. He walked to the community library, soaked through again, sneakers squeaking with every step. The building was nearly empty, just a few students curled in corners. The night librarian didn't stop him. She knew Sam. He always sat in the same back corner where the vent hummed and the light was soft. He opened his cereal box notebook and started searching on the cracked desktop computer. Harvard weather model failure. Dozens of links, academic PDFs he could barely open, let alone understand. But the diagrams, those he could read. One looked eerily familiar, swirling vectors, missed pressure ridges, arrows drawn where the system failed to bend. Sam grabbed a sheet of scrap printer paper and traced it quickly, hand shaking. Then he layered his own sketch from last week, the one Grandma had slipped into his notebook. His swirls aligned with the failed model, almost perfectly. He stared for a long time. They're missing the friction shift, he whispered. Right here. The vent hissed overhead. Someone behind him cleared their throat. You're not supposed to print without permission, the librarian said gently. Sam looked up. I'm sorry, I think I found something. She stared at the overlapping papers. That looks like math. Sam nodded slowly. It's weather. Sort of. I think Harvard's model broke because they missed a low-frequency variable that distorts the surface feedback loop before the data even gets processed. The librarian blinked. You're 11. I know. She knelt down next to him. Does your grandma know you're out this late? She thinks I'm home. I heard something I can't ignore. The woman stood quietly, then walked behind the desk. When she returned, she handed him a thin folder. My son went to MIT. Used to scribble like that too. Take this. It's his old workbook on applied systems. Maybe it helps. Sam held the folder like treasure. Inside were graphs, formulas, and taped to the back cover, a faded pencil with teeth marks. A symbol of persistence passed down through strangers. Thank you. Be careful, Sam. He nodded. At home, he laid everything out on the floor. Grandma was asleep, her arms slung over an open Bible. Sam tiptoed to the bathroom, where his stack of dinner plates still leaned against the tub. He placed the Harvard diagram on one plate, his own notes on another, and began matching systems using sticky rice grains to track movement. A broken model from the world's best minds, rebuilt in a kitchen by a dishwasher kid with second-hand pencils and rice. He didn't know how yet, but he was going to fix it, even if no one believed him. The streets glistened under streetlights, puddles glowing like the scattered mirrors. Sam walked home from the library, the borrowed MIT workbook pressed to his chest, his notebook tucked under one arm. Wind whipped through his hoodie, but he barely noticed. His mind raced faster than the rain clouds overhead. Back inside the apartment, he closed the door softly. Grandma still slept, curled on the couch, a knitted blanket over her feet. The heat had cut off earlier, another unpaid bill. Sam knelt beside the kitchen table, careful not to wake her. Then he pulled out the plates again. He lined them up, 5 in total. Each one held patterns drawn in marker, etched with pencil, even carved faintly with a fork. Swirls, arrows, timing sequences. He opened the MIT folder and flipped to a page marked Spatial Feedback Loops. He stared, then something shifted. That's it, he whispered. I see it differently now. Sam grabbed a spoon and dipped it in cold rice water. Using it like a paintbrush, he dotted the edges of one plate. The grains stuck just enough to move, but not fall. He tilted the plate. The grains shifted along the swirls. Then he did it again and again. He watched as the rice moved with each plate's curve, dancing in rhythm. One swirl resisted, that's where the shift was. The pattern broke there. He scribbled a note on the back of a junk envelope. Friction not constant. Needs correction bias. Sam leaned back, exhausted. His body ached. His fingers stained with marker and ink. But something inside him sparked. This wasn't guessing anymore. It was understanding. Morning came too fast. Grandma woke to find him asleep at the table, head on a pile of sketches. She didn't scold him, just set down 2 slices of toast and whispered, "You see something they don't. I can feel it." Later that day, Sam returned to the diner, backpack heavier than usual. Plates, papers, the MIT workbook, all wrapped in towels. He couldn't explain why, but he needed to carry it with him, just in case. Manny raised an eyebrow. You drawing on dishes again? Sam smirked. Maybe. Halfway through his shift, the dishwasher jammed. Manny cursed under his breath, slamming the sink shut. Sam stepped back and stared at the metal tray where dishes lined up to be washed. A thought flashed. Wait. He reached into his bag, pulled out a clean plate with his markings, and placed it under the hot spray. As steam rose, droplets followed the grooves he'd drawn. Some paths broke, others held. The water moved just like the rice grains, real-time flow under pressure. A waitress watched from the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Testing a hypothesis," Sam said, eyes never leaving the plate. Manny walked over, arms crossed. "Kid, this is a diner, not a science fair." But Sam didn't stop. He adjusted the water temperature, watched again, then pulled the plate out and drew new lines over the old ones. "This one reacts at 72 degrees. That's the pivot." Manny leaned in. "You serious right now?" Sam turned, eyes wide. What if friction isn't just resistance? What if it's dynamic, changing based on temperature, slope, and moisture? That would explain why their models fall apart during high-pressure shifts. Manny blinked. "Kid, I don't know what half that means, but you look like you just saw God in a soup bowl." Sam laughed, not because it was funny, because it was true. He sat on a crate, opened his notebook, and began redrawing everything with new calculations. The symbols from the MIT book began to blend with his plate sketches. New systems formed, curves corrected, biases adjusted. In the back of the notebook, he taped the rice grain from the night before. Just one. A symbol now. Proof that something small could reveal something massive. That night, Grandma peeked into the bathroom and saw Sam asleep on the floor again. Plates stacked neatly, notes aspread like puzzle pieces. She didn't wake him. She turned off the light, left the door open, and whispered into the dark. "Keep going, baby. You're closer than you think." The train screeched as it pulled into the university district. Sam gripped the metal pole, his backpack pressed to his chest. Inside were the plates, his notes, and the rice grain model. He had barely slept. His heart thudded like the storm drums. Outside, the campus looked like another world. Old stone buildings, glass halls, students moving like they owned the place. Sam's hoodie was soaked from rain. His shoes squeaked on marble floors. He stepped into the side entrance of Jefferson Hall, the same place he'd heard about on the news. A student held the door. "You lost, kid?" Sam nodded once. "I'm here to return something for Dr. Monroe." The name froze the student mid-step. Room 3.16, Department of Atmospheric Science. Sam found it at the end of a quiet hallway. His palms were sweating as he knocked. The door creaked open. A professor with tired eyes looked up from his laptop. "Yes, I think your model. I know why it failed." The man blinked, then frowned. "Who sent you?" "No one. I heard about it. I've been working on something." Sam reached into his bag and pulled out a plate, the rice still glued to the swirls. The professor laughed under his breath. "A plate?" Sam nodded. "I used it to test movement and feedback loops. The friction distortion is real. It changes based on surface interaction, not just pressure." The professor stood up slowly. "You're telling me my $2 billion model was missing something you found while washing dishes?" Sam stayed silent. "Who are you?" "My name's Sam. I'm 11. I work nights at a diner." A long pause. Then the professor scoffed. "Security's getting lazy." All right, nice prank, kid. Very clever. But next time, maybe use a calculator instead of a cereal box. He started to shut the door. Sam spoke louder. It's not a prank. I've got the numbers. I mapped 6 storm events. The curve fails every time at the same friction point. I used your own published diagrams. Another professor inside the room stood. Monroe, wait. But Dr. Monroe waved him off. You know what I see? A child with a Sharpie and a dish set. Congratulations, but this isn't science. This is imagination. Maybe go back to washing plates, Sam. He shut the door in Sam's face. For a long time, Sam didn't move. His reflection in the hallway glass looked smaller than usual. He could still hear the laughter inside. He walked out slowly, fists clenched. Outside, the sky had cleared. A breeze swept through the quad. Sam found a bench and sat down. He pulled out his notebook, the one Grandma had stitched together with tape and hope. The rice grain was still taped to the back cover. They laughed, he whispered, but I won't stop. A voice interrupted. May I? It was the second professor, the one who had tried to speak. He looked about 40 with kind eyes and a stack of books under one arm. I'm Dr. Lindell, he said. I saw your model. You're serious, aren't you? Sam nodded, still guarded. I can't promise much, Lindell said, but I want to understand what you saw. He sat beside Sam, who slowly pulled out the plates again. The sun hit the surface just right, casting tiny shadows where the grains curved around hand-drawn swirls. Lindell leaned in. This isn't random. These curves follow actual velocity fields. Sam flipped open his notebook. I think the model collapses when the bias weight is kept linear. But it isn't. It bends under temperature variance. Lindell's eyebrows lifted. That's not how we do it, but it works. Sam stared at him. You believe me? I believe in the work. Lindell stood, then handed Sam a card. Come back tomorrow. Bring everything, but next time maybe use a pen instead of sauce. Sam smiled. It was the first time in days. As Lindell walked away, Sam looked down at the taped rice grain. A dish, a notebook, a pencil. They'd called it imagination, but maybe that was the point. The next morning, Sam returned to Harvard's Jefferson Hall with his backpack clutched tight. Inside his notebook, 5 plates and the rice grain model were wrapped in a towel. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since lunch at the diner yesterday. Room 2.09. Seminar room with a wide chalkboard and long wooden tables. Lindell had said to come here. Sam hesitated at the door, then stepped in. 7 people were already seated. Grad students, 2 professors. And at the head of the table, Dr. Monroe. Lindell stood to greet him. Sam, you made it. Sam nodded, heart pounding. Monroe didn't look up. Lindell gestured toward the front. You said you could show us how the system fails and where it can be corrected. Now's the time. Sam placed the plates on the table, then pulled out the notebook. His hands trembled as he opened it. Start from the beginning, Lindell said. Sam took a deep breath. 3 years ago, your lab introduced a prediction model based on 6-layer friction assumptions. But it missed a variable. Low-pressure temperature shifts disrupt surface friction. That distortion isn't constant. It bends, reverses, then resets. Like this. He held up a plate and tilted it. The rice shifted and caught at a specific curve. You're using rice, a grad student scoffed. Are we cooking now? A few chuckled. Monroe leaned back in his chair. This is nonsense. Sam looked him straight in the eye. Then prove I'm wrong. The room fell silent. Monroe stood, his voice cold. You want to play scientist, dishwasher boy? Then prove it. You have 48 hours. Build your model. Show us your data. Real math, not spaghetti art. Sam's mouth went dry. If you fail, you leave. You never step foot in this department again. Understood? Lindell opened his mouth, but Sam beat him to it. I'll do it. Monroe raised a brow. You're serious? I'll show you. Sam grabbed the towel, rewrapped his plates, and turned to leave. But Lindell followed him out into the hallway. Sam, wait. He caught up as Sam zipped his hoodie, face burning. That was reckless, Lindell said quietly. Monroe's not bluffing. They'll shred you. I don't care, Sam replied. They already think I'm nothing, so I've got nothing to lose. Lindell sighed, then reached into his satchel. He pulled out a thick packet, blank graph paper, printed storm maps, and a calculator. Then don't do it alone, he said. Take this. Use my office, it's quiet. No one will bother you there. Sam took the supplies, fingers brushing over the stiff paper. Thanks, he said, but I still need a pencil. Lindell reached into his coat pocket and handed over a short, chewed-up yellow pencil. The eraser was worn to the metal. MIT 1999, he said. Don't break it. Sam nodded and ran. That night, he sat in Lindell's office, floor covered in maps and notes. The rice grain still taped to his notebook. A dish towel on the desk. He scribbled equations, erased them, rewrote them. Time slipped by. At midnight, Grandma called. You all right, baby? I've got 2 days to do what Harvard couldn't in 5 years. A pause. You eat? No. I'll bring you something. She hung up. 2 hours later, she stood at the office door with a thermos and 2 sandwiches wrapped in foil. Sam opened the door with tears in his eyes. You didn't have to come. You think I'd let you starve chasing storms? They sat on the floor. Sam explained everything. She didn't understand the math, but she listened to every word. Before she left, she picked up the old pencil from the desk. Still works, she said. Sam smiled. Barely. She kissed his forehead. So do most miracles. When she was gone, Sam sharpened the pencil and kept writing. Through the night, through the fear, through the doubt, 48 hours, no degree, no fancy tools, just a pencil, a notebook, and a boy who refused to disappear. Lindell's office was silent, except for the steady scratching of pencil on paper. Sam sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by storm charts, notebooks, and a pile of used erasers. It was 2:13 a.m. The only light came from a desk lamp, flickering slightly when the heater kicked on. He hadn't left the building in 18 hours. His eyes were bloodshot. His back ached. But he kept writing, each new equation built on the last. The rice grain model now lived in digital form, sketched across graph paper and mapped over real storms. Hurricane Lex, Typhoon Mara, the Chicago floods. The breakthrough came just before dawn. Sam yawned, leaned forward, and traced a swirl pattern on an old map of the Midwest. He paused. No way, he muttered. That's it. He grabbed a plate from his bag and lined it up with the chart. Then he sprinkled a pinch of flour on the curve and tilted the plate. The powder slid in a way he'd never noticed before, gathering at the exact inflection point the models kept failing to predict. It wasn't just friction, it was memory. The surface retained behavior from the last system, like bruises on a body. That's why storms followed unexpected paths, why models broke under back-to-back pressure cycles. Sam stood up so fast he knocked over a stack of books. He rushed to the whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and drew a new equation. Feedback inertia, he whispered. They forgot the ghost variables. He grabbed his notebook, the one Grandma had pieced together. Flipping to the back, he wrote out his findings line by line, cross-checking everything against Lindell's maps. His pencil snapped. He stared at the broken stub in his hand, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the chewed MIT pencil. He held it for a second. Then he sharpened it with the blade of a house key and kept going. The hallway clock struck 6. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but his mind was alive. He printed the diagrams using Lindell's dusty inkjet and assembled a 3-page summary. Diagrams, a sample formula, and one final chart. A plate diagram matched to historical storm deviations. He placed it all into a binder made of folded cardboard and duct tape, the kind of folder no one at Harvard had ever seen. Sam exhaled. Then his stomach growled. He opened a granola bar from his bag, stale and bent, and chewed in silence. At 7:15, Grandma called. "You alive?" "Barely," he said, smiling, "but I think I cracked it." "Good. I lit a candle for you, and I told Pastor Rob you're rewriting the sky." Sam laughed. "That's a little much. Baby, you're doing this for more than them." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. "I know, I'm doing it for us." He hung up and gathered his things, the plates, the binder, the notebook with the taped rice grain still inside. By 8, the seminar room was packed. Students, faculty, even the janitor who'd let Sam in on day 1 stood near the back. Dr. Monroe was already seated, arms crossed. Lindell stood at the edge of the room, watching. Sam walked to the front, binder in hand. "No slides?" someone muttered. "No degrees," someone else whispered. Sam opened his notebook. "I didn't come to impress you," he said. "I came to show you." He set the plate on the desk, opened the binder, pointed to the friction loops, the temperature thresholds, the memory lines. The room was quiet. Then Monroe snorted. "So you believe the atmosphere has memory? That storms carry echoes like ghosts?" Sam didn't blink. "I don't believe it. I proved it." He handed over the last diagram. 4 storms plotted with the corrected variable, and their actual paths matching with 92% accuracy. A murmur rippled through the room. Sam stepped back. He looked down at his notebook, fingers touching the rice grain. His voice steady. "I won't give up. Not when I can help stop the next flood. Not when I've lived through one." The room held its breath. Sam stood silent at the front, arms hanging by his sides, eyes scanning the long row of professors. His binder lay open. The recycled cardboard cover was bent, edges softened by hours of use. The final diagram, his prediction overlay, sat on the projector table beside his plate. The air buzzed with something raw, disbelief, then movement. A student near the back raised a hand. "That last chart," she said. "How did you calculate the inversion on the 3rd pressure loop?" Sam flipped to page 12 in his notebook. his finger resting just above a formula written in fading pencil. I used a bias compensation layer, adjusted the output to account for the storm's residual moisture pattern. The shift always occurs where the trailing front dips below 62% humidity. A hush. Someone whispered, "That's not in any of the models." Dr. Lindell stepped forward, voice steady. "He's right. It's not." Dr. Monroe rose slowly, his eyes on the data. He walked over, picked up the plate, and turned it in his hands. "You really did all this in a diner kitchen?" Sam nodded. "With flour and rice and time." Monroe looked him over like he was still trying to make sense of it. "You're 11. "Yes, sir." Monroe stared at the chart again. "This model, it predicts the Quincy flood system 2 days earlier than our current forecasts." The room stirred. Monroe said nothing for a long time. Then he set the plate down and stepped back. "I underestimated you." He looked toward the crowd, then back at Sam. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing here is a working correction to a failed billion-dollar forecast system. And it came from a dishwasher." Gasps. Someone clapped, then another, and another. The applause grew, surprised at first, then thunderous. Sam just stood there, stunned. He looked toward the side of the room, where Grandma now stood in the doorway, hands clasped tight, eyes glistening. She hadn't said a word. She didn't need to. Lindell approached, smiling. "You did it." Sam nodded, barely able to speak. "I didn't think they'd listen." They had no choice. A young postdoc in the front row stood and asked, "Where did you even learn this?" Sam looked down at his notebook, the taped rice grain, the chewed pencil, the plate with red ink and flour dust still clinging to its edge. "I didn't learn it from books," he said. "I learned it from watching, from loss, from paying attention when no one else would." The room quieted again. Then Monroe turned to the chalkboard, grabbed a piece of white chalk, and wrote 4 words in large, slow strokes. Sam's model variant A. The moment landed like a bolt of lightning. "I want to run this through our mainframe," Monroe said. "If this holds under stress testing, we're rewriting our entire forecast methodology." A grad student leaned in. "He's not even enrolled." Lindell raised a hand. "Maybe it's time we fix that." Sam looked at them all. Every face that had doubted him, laughed at him, dismissed him. And he didn't feel angry. He felt calm. "I'm just trying to make sure no kid goes through what I did," he said. "That's all." Someone in the back raised their phone, recording, and the clip would go viral by morning. But for now, Sam just walked back to his seat, Grandma wrapping an arm around his shoulder, proud and quiet. She whispered, "Told you that pencil still had some magic in it." He smiled, eyes damp, and for the first time, he believed her. The crowd had faded, the room emptied. All that remained were scraps of applause and the echo of Sam's model chalked onto the board. Lindell gathered papers. Monroe scribbled on a clipboard. But Sam stood alone at the front, holding his notebook like it was glass. He hadn't said much after the presentation, just smiled, nodded, and shook hands with trembling fingers. Now the weight of it hit him. He turned toward Lindell. "Can I say something before I leave?" Lindell paused. "Of course." Monroe looked up, surprised. Sam cleared his throat. "I didn't do this to prove I'm smart. I did it because I had to." He opened the notebook, the rice grain still taped inside, the chewed pencil tucked between the pages. "My dad was a sanitation worker Real quiet, loved maps. He'd trace storm systems in the newspaper with a red pen, draw lines from city to city. Said it helped him feel ahead of something for once. He looked up. 5 years ago, we had a flood. Flash rain. Nobody saw it coming. Not the city, not the news. We lived on the first floor. Water came in so fast he didn't have time to lift me up. He pushed me onto the counter, then I slipped trying to get the door open. His voice cracked. I was 6. I watched him drown. The room fell to stone silence. Sam gripped the edges of his notebook tighter. They said it was just nature, but I remember yelling that the storm was wrong, that it shouldn't have turned north. I said it again and again. I drew it in the hospital with crayons. Nobody listened. He took a deep breath, so I started listening to clouds, to wind, to patterns in puddles and streetlights and broken storm drains. I wrote it all down because if I could figure it out, maybe some other kid wouldn't have to scream and go unheard. Grandma stood near the door, tears on her cheeks. She clutched the bag she always carried, patches on the strap, zipper long broken. Lindell's eyes softened. Monroe's clipboard lowered. I'm not a genius, Sam said. I'm a dishwasher who stayed up every night trying to stop the next flood. He flipped to the last page in his notebook, half torn, barely holding. In the corner was a drawing, a stick figure, a little boy on a counter, a man reaching through water. His name was David, and this, Sam held up the plate, the same one he'd used in every test. This is for him. Grandma stepped forward, hand trembling, and placed something on the table beside him. It was the red pen, his father's pen. I found it, she whispered, in the old drawer with his maps. You were right, he did mark that storm. Sam took it, the weight of it warm in his palm. He clicked it once, it still worked. The ink drew a perfect line down his page. Lindell stepped closer. You're not just correcting models, Sam, you're correcting history. Monroe said nothing, but nodded once. A slow, reluctant kind of respect. Sam turned toward the chalkboard, and under the words Sam's Model Variant A, he drew a small red arrow pointing north. Then he closed the notebook, not with triumph, with purpose. I just want the storms to tell the truth, he said. And somehow, in that moment, they did. The celebration didn't last long. 3 days after Sam's breakthrough, Lindell's office door was locked. The keycard access had been revoked. A red sticker on the glass read, "Temporary use terminated." Sam stood there, gripping his binder, his notebook tucked under one arm. He knocked once, no answer. Then Monroe appeared at the end of the hallway. Sam, he said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. You'll need to clear out. Why? Sam asked. Monroe adjusted his glasses. There's been questions from the board, from donors. About what? Monroe hesitated. Your work, its authenticity, your background. Some feel we were too quick to endorse an unverified contribution. I didn't cheat, Sam said firmly. You saw it. Yes, Monroe replied, but not everyone agrees. Sam stared, stunned. You think I copied someone? I was washing dishes while you were publishing those models. Monroe sighed. It's not what I think, it's what the institution requires. Protocols, peer review, credentials. Credentials? Sam said, his voice rising. You mean suits and degrees? We can't confirm the data lineage, Monroe said. Some believe Lindell fabricated your findings. What? He's being reviewed. Sam's hands tightened around the binder. They can't erase me, he said quietly. Monroe looked at him for a long moment. That's not my call. Then he turned and walked away. Sam stood frozen. Behind him, students passed without looking. One bumped his shoulder. You that kid from the video? The student asked. Heard it was staged. Sam didn't respond. He went straight to the basement, where Lindell had shown him a forgotten storage room filled with maps and outdated computers. It was dark now, quiet. He sat in the corner, flashlight in hand, flipping through his notebook. The pages were still his. The red ink from his father's pen still curved through the margins. But the space around him had shifted. He wasn't welcome anymore. He didn't cry, not yet. Footsteps echoed down the stairs. Then the door creaked. It was Lindell. His tie was loose, his coat folded over one arm. They're freezing me out, he said, boards holding an ethics inquiry. Monroe's playing both sides. Sam stood up. They think you made me up? Lindell nodded. They can't imagine your work is real, and they don't want to admit they missed it. Sam sat back down, resting the notebook on his lap. I thought if I did something good enough, they'd have to let me in. Lindell sat beside him. That's the myth. You don't get in because you're brilliant. You get in because someone inside says you belong. He looked at Sam. You do belong, but you're still going to have to fight for it. A long pause. Then Lindell pulled a folded letter from his coat pocket. An article's being written. They want to paint you as a fluke, a feel-good story gone wrong. Sam took the paper, scanned the headline. Dishwasher or deceiver? The Harvard forecast controversy. They're scared, Sam said. Not of me, of being wrong. He opened his notebook, flipped to the page where the rice grain was still taped. They can take my space, he said, but not this. He held it up like a shield. I'll finish the work, even if it's from a basement. Lindell smiled, tired but proud. You're already doing it. Sam nodded. Let them talk, he said. Let them doubt. He stood. I'm not leaving. Lindell rose too. Then I'm staying. Sam tucked the notebook into his backpack, reached into his pocket and pulled out the chewed pencil, sharpened now to half its size. He stared at it, a weapon made of wood and lead. Then, together, they walked back upstairs, through the rumors, through the silence, through the system that didn't want them. Because storms don't ask permission, they come anyway. The meeting was set for noon. Harvard's Science Review Board had called it informal, but the tension in the auditorium said otherwise. Faculty filled the first rows. Grad students packed the back. 2 reporters lingered near the exit with cameras off but notebooks open. Sam stood near the podium, binder in hand, his backpack resting at his feet. The chewed pencil stuck out of the side pocket. He glanced toward the doors. Still no sign of Lindell. A throat cleared behind him. You'll have 10 minutes, said Dr. Sterling, the board chair. And keep it factual, no dramatics. Sam nodded. Once. Monroe sat to her right, face unreadable. Sam walked to the center, notebook in one hand, the same plate in the other. My name is Sam Torres, he said. I'm not a scientist. I don't have a degree. I work nights in a diner. But this, he opened the notebook to a page worn from use, flowers still faintly visible in the corners. This is my work. Somebody chuckled. Sterling gave them a sharp look. Sam continued. I tracked 7 storm systems across 3 regions, mapped them to known forecasts. then adjusted the pressure feedback based on surface memory. He turned and clicked the projector. A slide appeared, the same chart from days ago. But now, beside it, was a live feed, radar, of a forming system over the Gulf. This storm wasn't predicted until last night. My model saw it 72 hours earlier. Another click, more overlays, paths, deviations, dates. The murmurs began to shift. Then he held up the plate. This isn't just a symbol. It's how I started. With flour, rice, and time. I didn't cheat. I didn't steal. I listened. From the corner of the room, the door opened. Lindell walked in. His jacket was soaked, his face pale. He was holding a thick envelope. "Sorry I'm late," he said, out of breath, "but I have what you need." He walked to the board and placed the envelope in front of the Sterling. "These are the logs, every page Sam wrote, every timestamp, every email between us. I scanned and notarized everything." He looked directly at Monroe. "No fabrications, no help. Just a kid doing what our systems couldn't." Sterling opened the envelope, pulled out the contents, and began flipping through them. Her brow furrowed. She passed it to the member beside her. Lindell turned back to Sam. "They can't deny it now." Sam stepped back, unsure. One professor raised his hand. "If this is true, why wasn't it caught earlier?" Lindell answered, "Because we weren't looking in the right places. We thought Discovery wore a lab coat. Sometimes it wears dish gloves." Another voice from the crowd. "But this could reset the department's reputation. Are we supposed to accept that an 11-year-old cracked it?" Sam finally spoke again. "I didn't crack it overnight. I've been doing this since I was 6. While you were publishing, I was watching people drown." He tapped the notebook. "This isn't theory, it's survival." A long silence followed. Then Monroe stood. All eyes turned to him. He walked forward, took the plate gently from Sam's hands, and held it up. "This is science," he said. "Messy, unlikely, resilient." He looked toward the board. "I was wrong. I mocked him. I betid Lindell. I laughed at a rice grain." He set the plate down like it was glass. "But I've reviewed every note, every sketch. It's real. He's real." The crowd buzzed. Phones lit up. Cameras turned on. Sterling stood. "This board acknowledges the original work of Sam Torres and accepts his contribution into the department's research archive." She paused. "And we owe him more than that." Sam blinked, then lowered his head. Lindell placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did it." Sam whispered, "We did." The rice grain still clung to the notebook, unmoved, unshaken, unforgettable. The courtyard was quiet, leaves scattered in the wind, crisp and golden. Sam sat on a bench, notebook in his lap, pencil between his fingers. He hadn't written since the board meeting, not because he was tired, but because he didn't know what came next. Across the lawn, Lindell approached with 2 paper cups in hand. "Hot chocolate," he said. "Figured you've had enough coffee for a lifetime." Sam smiled faintly. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a moment. Birds chirped in the distance. Students passed in pairs whispering. Lindell finally spoke. "President Kessler wants to meet you." Sam looked up, startled. "The president? Of the university?" Lindell nodded. "Tomorrow morning? Her office alone." Sam blinked. "What for?" She didn't say, but she cleared her schedule. That night, Sam barely slept. Grandma made arroz con leche and laid out his cleanest shirt. She didn't say much, just pressed the red pen into his hand. "Write what matters." she whispered. The next day, Sam stood outside the grand doors of the administration building, marble steps, glass panels, the kind of place people like him weren't supposed to enter. He knocked. A secretary smiled, then led him into a high-ceilinged office filled with books and light. President Kessler stood behind her desk, sleeves rolled, her silver hair tied back. She extended a hand. "Sam Torres." He shook it gently. "I've been reading about you." "I figured," he said quietly. She smiled. "They say you cracked our most complex weather model, that you built your method on dishes and flour." Sam held up his notebook. "It's all in here." Kessler walked around her desk and leaned on the edge. "I reviewed every note, every timestamp, every flaw you corrected. This," she pointed to the binder, "is not a fluke. It's brilliance born from necessity." Sam didn't know what to say. She continued, "But brilliance is not enough. Not here. We train, we test, we gatekeep. Sometimes for good reason, sometimes out of fear." She looked him in the eyes. "They feared you because you made them feel small." Sam lowered his gaze. "I didn't want to humiliate anyone." "You didn't," she said. "You reminded us why we're here." Then she opened a folder. Inside was a letterhead. Harvard crest. Sam's name printed at the top. He read the words slowly. Then again. A full academic scholarship. Room, board. Year-round mentorship. His hands trembled. "You believe in me?" he asked. Kessler smiled. "I believe in your persistence, in your pencil, in your plate." She handed him a separate envelope. "A startup grant to digitize your system. You'll work with faculty, but the framework is yours. Your name, your rules." Sam was speechless. Then he remembered something. "My grandma," he said. Can I bring her to campus sometimes? She's why I made it this far." Kessler's voice softened. "We'll make sure she has a seat at every talk you give." Sam closed the notebook and pressed it to his chest. "Thank you." As he walked out into the sunlight, the weight of years lifted from his shoulders. He passed Monroe in the hallway. The older man paused, then nodded once. "We missed you," Monroe said. Sam nodded back. "I was here the whole time." Back in the apartment, he laid the scholarship letter on the table. Grandma gasped, then pulled him into a tight hug. "I told you," she whispered, "you were never just washing dishes." Later that night, Sam opened the notebook again. The rice grains still clung to the last page. He picked up the pencil, now barely 3 inches long, and began to write again. This time, with the whole world watching. The auditorium lights dimmed. Rows of faculty filled the seats in their robes, velvet and gold trim, glowing under the stage lights. Families crowded in the back. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the corner, the scent of fresh carnations lingered from the morning ceremony. Sam stood behind the curtain, heart pounding through his chest. He tugged at the stiff collar of the new shirt they'd given him. His name was printed on the program. Last on the list. Sam Torres, Honorary Research Scholar, Department of Atmospheric Science. He hadn't told Grandma yet. Backstage, Lindell placed a hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" "No," Sam said, "but I'm here. That's all that matters." The dean stepped to the podium. "This next student changed more than a model. He reminded us what discovery looks like when it has no funding, no title, no safety net. He reminded us why We listened. Sam's name echoed through the room. Applause rose like thunder. He stepped into the light. The audience stood. Grandma gasped from the second row, her hands covering her mouth. She wore the same yellow dress she'd saved for church. The red pen sat in her pocket. Sam reached the podium, notebook in hand. The rice grain still clung to the last page. "I don't have a long speech," he said. "Just a promise." He looked out over the room. "I didn't do this to be honored. I did it so people like me don't drown in silence, so that one day when a storm is coming, no one has to guess if help will come in time." He paused. "I used to think my work didn't matter because I wasn't allowed in the room. But sometimes the storm comes through the back door." Laughter, applause. I did it for my dad, for my grandma, for every kid who sees patterns where others see noise. He held up the notebook. "This is where it started." Then he stepped back. The dean approached and placed a medal around his neck, gold-plated, Harvard seal engraved. The ribbon caught the stage light. "We welcome Sam Torres as the youngest academic research fellow in our university's history." As the crowd stood again, Sam caught his grandma's eye. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Back at the apartment, the living room was filled with balloons. A neighbor brought cupcakes. Someone brought a homemade sign that read, "From dishes to data." Grandma wrapped Sam in a hug so tight he nearly dropped his medal. "I told everyone at church," she said. "Even Pastor Rob cried." He smiled. "I did it for us." She touched the medal gently. "No, baby, you did it for everyone who never got the chance." Later that night, the apartment was quiet. Sam sat at the kitchen table alone. The medal lay beside his plate, the notebook in front of him, the chewed pencil in his hand. He flipped to a fresh page. He hesitated. For the first time, he wasn't writing to survive. He was writing to build. He sketched the outline of a new model, one that blended his original ideas with the department's latest research. A hybrid of intuition and code, movement and math. Then he tore a sheet from the notebook carefully and pressed it flat. On the back, he wrote one sentence, "Built from the edge," for the center. He folded it once, then placed it inside the red folder Kessler had given him earlier. That folder would become the start of his lab, a space where talent didn't wait for permission. Sam leaned back, closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt the sky was listening. The rain came hard that spring, but this time, no one was caught off guard. In the south side of Chicago, sandbags lined the streets before the first warning. Evacuation centers opened 2 days early. Cell phones buzzed with precise updates hour by hour. And at the center of it all was a weather alert that didn't come from a federal agency or a legacy model. It came from Sam's system. In a community center just 4 blocks from the diner where he once scrubbed plates, families watched a projection screen as a storm data rolled in, color-coded, mapped, and verified by Sam's software. A little girl pointed at the map. "Mama, look, it's turning before it hits us." Her mother whispered, "Thank God." Across the room, a technician radioed a shelter team. "We've got 12 hours, plenty of time." Sam stood in the back, hoodie pulled low, watching in silence. Next to him, Grandma squeezed his hand. They're safe because of you. He shook his head. They're safe because someone listened. It hadn't been easy. When Harvard approved his lab, few believed his models would scale. Funding was tight. Field testing was slow. Local governments hesitated. You want us to trust an 11-year-old's dishwater math? One city official had asked. But Lindell stood with him, side by side, pushing every paper, every data set, every prediction that came true, storm after storm. Then came the Bakersfield flash flood. The standard models missed it. Sam's didn't. 100 homes were evacuated on time. Not a single casualty. The moment changed everything. Now, 27 cities used the Torres Index, not just for weather, but for emergency resource planning, power outages, evacuation paths, even heat wave targeting. Back in the lab, Sam adjusted the parameters for a coastal town in Florida. Shift landfall by 7 hours, he said. A grad student typed quickly. Done. A researcher from the Philippines dialed in on Zoom. We ran your new bias compensation code. Worked like a charm. You just saved us $1 million in crop loss. Sam smiled. This is for them, he said. All of them. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the notebook. The cover was cracked now, the tape on the spine peeling, but the rice grain still clung to the final page, a symbol of the beginning. That night, a local news team visited the community center. They asked Sam for an interview. You went from dishwasher to disaster prevention icon. What's next? He looked into the camera. I'm not trying to be an icon. I just want kids like me to know the world will change if they don't give up. The segment aired citywide. The next day, someone left a drawing on the steps of his lab, a crayon sketch of a boy standing in the rain, holding a plate like a shield. At the bottom, it said, "Thank you, Sam." He kept it on the wall right above his father's red pen. In a staff meeting later that week, Lindell pointed at the latest forecast results. This model's outperforming the national average by 30%. You realize what that means? Sam nodded. It means they are finally ready. For what? To let someone like me lead. Grandma walked into the room just then with a tray of tamales. Or maybe, she said, they're just smart enough to stop getting in your way. Everyone laughed. But beneath the laughter, there was a truth none of them could deny. Sam had changed more than a system. He had changed the story. Not just his own, but the one told in every classroom, every hallway, every home that ever said you don't belong here. Now the door was open, and the rain no longer frightened them, because someone had taught the storm how to speak. The rooftop was quiet. Sam stood alone, the city stretching out beneath him. A warm wind rolled over the skyline. Far in the distance, he could see the diner, the one where it all began. In his hands, the notebook, worn, faded, barely holding together. The pencil, now just a nub, wood splintered from being sharpened too many times, and still, he kept it close. Behind him, the rooftop door creaked open. Lindell stepped out, 2 cups of coffee in hand. You always did like the high places. Sam smiled. They make everything down there feel understandable. Lindell handed him a cup. So now what? Sam looked back over the city. Storm season's coming early this year. I've already updated the coastal grids. Texas, Florida, even Sri Lanka's using the bias layer model now. You've done more before 18 than most scientists do in a lifetime. I'm not done, Lindell nodded. I know. A long pause, Sam's voice dropped. You ever think about how close it came to nothing? If I hadn't walked into that hallway, if you hadn't stopped Monroe from slamming that door. I think about it every day. Sam held up the notebook. This shouldn't have worked. But it did, Lindell said, because you didn't stop when the world told you to. They stood in silence as the sun dipped lower. The city glowed gold. Horns, footsteps, wind, a choir of survival. Sam turned. Do you know what I think about? What? He looked down at the street. There's another kid right now, somewhere, sitting in a basement or a janitor's closet, building something no one will believe in. Lindell nodded. Maybe even more than one. I want them to know, Sam said. They're not crazy, or lost, or wrong. They're just early. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the red folder, the one where he had written, "Built from the edge," for the center. I'm opening a new lab, he said. Not here, not at Harvard. Lindell raised an eyebrow. Where then? Where I come from, Sam said. South Side. We'll train kids who've been overlooked. Start with recycled laptops, community Wi-Fi, teach them to model storms, to find the systems no one else sees. Lindell laughed softly. That's not a lab, that's a revolution. Maybe it's both. Just then, the rooftop door opened again. Grandma walked out, a little slower this time, sweater tight around her shoulders. You boys always talking science or changing the world again? Sam turned. Both, he said, grinning. She walked over, placed a hand on his chest. You've come a long way, baby. He looked at her. You brought me here. She touched the notebook gently. No, you wrote your way here. Sam looked down at the final page. The rice grain was still there, but something had changed. Cracked in half, maybe, but held in place by new tape. Stronger, clearer. He smiled. He opened a new page, blank, ready. I think it's time for the next chapter. Grandma sat on a nearby bench. You sure? Sam nodded. I used to think success was about where you ended up. And now? He looked toward the edge of the roof, then back at her. Now I know it's about where you start and how loud you're willing to whisper until someone listens. The city below shimmered. Lindell raised his coffee. To the whisper that became a storm, Sam raised his pencil. To every dish, every doubt, and every door they said we'd never walk through. He placed the pencil gently between the new pages and began again.